On the night of death, all dolls must be burned, but one was left behind, and when it blinked, it chose a child to take. Night fell on Eldervale Village in an unusual silence. No wind, no crickets, only thick stillness. Curtains were shut early, mirrors covered with black cloth, and no child was allowed outside, not even for the bathroom. In the village square, people gathered with something in their hands, dolls, old, worn, wooden, or porcelain. Each one was thrown into a fire. It was the ancient ritual of the night of death, though no one could truly explain its origin. They only knew this: on the 30th day of the dark month, if even one doll was not burned, the spirit trapped inside would return to find a new body. A child's body, weak and open. Long ago, a family forgot to burn a doll. The next morning, their child was found in bed, lifeless and rotting, though the night before he had been laughing and healthy. Since then, the ritual was law, no questions, no exceptions. Elina, a 9-year-old girl, clutched her favorite doll tightly. Its name was Suri, made from torn batik cloth with button eyes and a red stitched mouth. She didn't want to let it go. It was her only friend. Tears streamed down her face as her mother forced her to hand Suri over to the fire. "It's for your safety, dear. Don't look back," her mother whispered, wrapping Elina's head in a dark shawl as the flames rose behind them. The fire crackled. Dolls burned one by one, some releasing small squeaks, wood cracking, or maybe something else. No one spoke. All heads bowed. When the fire began to die, the village elders checked the ashes, making sure no dolls remained. But none of them noticed the one doll still lying beneath the old banyan tree, untouched, unburnt, and its glassy eyes flickered, as if alive. Behind the trees, a young boy watched. His name was Theo. He hadn't brought a doll. His family had moved away years ago, but his curiosity led him back. Hiding in the shadows, he crept toward the banyan tree after the crowd left. He picked up the forgotten doll. It felt cold, damp, like it had just been pulled from the ground. Then, before he could drop it, the doll's eyes slowly blinked. Theo froze. He stared at the doll in his hand, unsure if what he saw was real. Maybe the flames had played tricks on his eyes. But then, the doll's eyelids fluttered again, twice. There was no mechanism, no battery, just stitched cloth and glass. He dropped it instantly, heart racing. The doll fell to the ground with a soft thud, but didn't stay still. It rolled toward him, slowly, as if pulled by invisible strings. He turned and ran, through the trees, over roots and stone, back to the empty village path. But with every step, he heard it, soft scraping behind him. Not leaves, not wind, a dragging sound. When he reached his house, the front door creaked open by itself. Theo hesitated. His parents were still gone. No one was supposed to return until dawn. But inside, the sound had stopped. He stepped in. Silence. The house was cold, unnaturally cold, as if something had pulled warmth from the air. Theo reached for the light switch. It didn't work. "Power's out," he muttered, forcing himself to be brave. He lit a candle. Shadows leapt across the wall, but the moment the flame brightened, he saw it. The doll was sitting on the kitchen table, still damp, still blinking. A red thread hung from its mouth, like a tongue. His breath caught. He wanted to scream, but something inside him, an old fear from childhood, sealed his throat. He reached for the doll slowly, planning to toss it back outside. But the moment he touched it again, he felt something, a heartbeat. The doll was warm, breathing, whispering. He couldn't make out the words, only a soft, childlike hum, as if singing to itself. And somehow, it knew his name. At that moment, he remembered the story, not the one adults told, but the real one. The elders never shared it out loud, only passed in shivers and nightmares. The unburnt doll doesn't just want a child, it wants to become one. Theo dropped it again, backing away slowly. But behind him, the sound of footsteps, bare, soft, and slow, echoed down the hallway. And then a voice whispered, "Theo, do you want to play?" Theo turned slowly. His hands trembled, sweat clinging to his skin despite the cold. The hallway was empty, but the voice had come from there, clear as wind in his ear. "Who's there?" he whispered. No answer. Then the lights flickered once, briefly revealing a shadow that was too small to be human, yet too real to be imagination. It ran across the hallway, fast, silent, like a crawling child. He stumbled back, nearly knocking over the candle. The doll was no longer on the table. His breath came in short gasps. Then the sound returned, tiny footsteps circling the room. It was moving fast now, playing hide and seek in the dark. Theo bolted toward the front door, but when he grabbed the handle, it turned hot, searing his skin. The metal hissed as if rejecting him. He was trapped. "Play with me, Theo," the voice giggled again, louder, clearer. The sound came from every wall, every corner. He turned around, and the room was now filled with dolls, dozens of them, old, dusty, broken. Their eyes glowed faintly in the candlelight. None had been there before. All of them faced him. Then, in unison, they tilted their heads. It was like they were listening to something. From behind the curtain, the forgotten doll stepped out, walking on its own. It smiled, not with its mouth, but with the stitches stretching on its cloth face. It raised one hand slowly and pointed to the floor. A red chalk circle began forming under Theo's feet, drawn by an unseen hand. Symbols he couldn't understand glowed faintly. "Say yes," the doll whispered. "If you say yes, you'll never be alone again." Theo screamed and kicked the doll. It hit the wall and slumped lifeless. For a second, everything stopped. The candle flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. But in the pitch black, he heard laughter, not one voice, but many. Then a gust of cold air whispered into his ear once more. "You already said yes when you picked me up." Theo dropped to his knees, his body suddenly too heavy to move. It was like something unseen had wrapped around his limbs, tight, cold, and pulsing like veins. He tried to crawl, but felt sharp pain shoot through his spine. The symbols under him glowed brighter now, red like burning coal. His breath fogged in the air. Somewhere in the room, the doll stood back up. Without hands touching it, it floated forward. The walls of the house began to twist, not physically, but as if reality was bending inward. Photos melted, doors vanished, and outside the windows there was no street, only black fog stretching into nowhere. The whispers grew louder. They weren't in one language. Some were in child's giggles, others in ancient tongues Theo couldn't comprehend. Still, they all circled around a single idea. You belong to us now." He reached into his pocket, searching for his phone or anything sharp, anything real. But all he found was fabric, cloth that wasn't his. When he pulled it out, his hands shook. It was the torn dress of the doll, but now it looked wet, sticky, bloodied. He dropped it with a cry, and the candle relit on its own. Its small flame revealed something worse. Theo's reflection in the glass cupboard had changed. The boy in the glass had black buttons for eyes. His smile was stitched. He raised a hand to wave, but Theo hadn't moved. Behind the reflection stood dozens of children, pale and hollow-eyed, their bodies half cloth, half bone. One by one, they whispered, "Welcome." Then one of them pointed. Theo turned to look, and there stood Elina, the girl who had burned her doll, standing in his hallway, eyes wide with terror. "Elina?" he croaked. She didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the doll in front of Theo. "I told Grandma not to burn Suri," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But it came back anyway." As she stepped into the house, the air grew heavier. Theo tried to warn her, but his voice cracked into static. The doll turned its stitched face toward Elina and grinned. "Now we need another player." Elina felt her knees weaken. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her feet stayed frozen. The doll was no longer small. It had grown, its limbs longer, its body stitched with scraps of cloth from other toys. Its eyes glowed faintly red. "Don't listen," Theo whispered, voice faint and broken. But when Elina turned to him, he was no longer human. His smile stretched too wide, his skin sewn in uneven patches. She stepped backward, heart pounding, until her heel hit something. A box, small, wooden, carved with symbols just like the circle on the floor. As if responding to her touch, the box opened on its own. Inside was a single note, written in trembling ink. "Burn it before it chooses you." Beside the note was a matchstick, only one. Elina's hands shook as she reached for it, but the room darkened again. The dolls began chanting, softly, "Play, play, play." Theo's voice joined the chorus, but his face was blank. He moved stiffly, like a puppet on strings. "Don't be scared, Elina. It doesn't hurt. After the first scream, you'll feel empty, and then it fills you." He took a step toward her. The stitched smile widened. The real Theo, who once protected her from bullies, who once brought her a flower from the forest, was gone, or worse, trapped inside. "I don't want to play," Elina shouted, voice cracking. But the dolls didn't stop. The shadows swirled, reaching for her legs like smoke. Then the doll itself spoke again, this time from everywhere at once. "You came into the house. That means you agreed." Elina struck the match. Its light flared in the dark. She held it toward the box, but it didn't burn. The flame flickered, then vanished. The dolls laughed, and the red thread began crawling toward her feet. In desperation, Elina turned and ran toward the hallway, but every door she opened led back to the same room. The walls pulsed like skin. The floor moaned beneath her steps. "You can't leave," Theo whispered behind her. "You're part of the ritual now." Then, suddenly, Grandma Yara's voice echoed in her head, an old warning. "Never enter a marked house after sundown, or you'll finish what the dead began." Elina screamed, not just from fear, but rage. "I didn't start this!" she shouted into the dark, the dolls circling closer now, their shadows forming twisted hands. But the house responded like a living thing. The floor groaned under her feet, bleeding from the cracks. The walls oozed black threads. One wrapped around her wrist, pulling tight. Her skin stung, burning where it touched. The ritual had accepted her. The dolls began chanting a new phrase, words Elina didn't understand but felt deep inside her bones. The box she carried glowed faintly. She looked down. Inside, something had changed. The match was gone, replaced by a lock of hair, her hair. Then she realized this wasn't just about playing, it was about becoming. Each step, each fear was feeding the ritual, and she was the final piece. Suddenly, the reflection in the mirror changed. She saw Grandma Yara, young, crying, surrounded by the same dolls. Behind her, a child screamed. It was the same house, the same room. Elina gasped. The ritual wasn't new. It had happened before. Yara survived, but how? The mirror cracked, and from the shards, Elina heard one whisper. "Break the circle before it seals, or be sealed inside." Her eyes darted to the floor. The chalk circle pulsed beneath her. With the last of her strength, Elina kicked the box across the room and ran to the edge of the circle. Theo lunged, grabbing her ankle. "Stay," he hissed, eyes hollow. But Elina screamed and kicked him off, then scratched at the symbols with her nails, breaking them. The dolls shrieked, high and unnatural. The light snapped off, then back on. When she looked up, the dolls had frozen in place. The house was silent. Theo lay motionless, eyes open but lifeless. The air felt dead. Slowly, Elina stood, trembling. "Is it over?" she whispered. But the silence didn't answer. Then, in the corner, she saw one final doll, unmoving, its head bowed. It hadn't been there before. As she stepped toward it, her blood ran cold. The doll wore her necklace, the one she'd lost that morning. Elina's hands trembled as she reached for the necklace. It dangled loosely from the doll's stitched neck, glinting faintly in the flickering candlelight. She hadn't realized until now, every doll in the house had pieces of someone. A ribbon, a shoelace, a button. They weren't just toys, they were vessels, carriers of memory, of soul. And this one, it remembered her. It remembered everything. The doll's head tilted slowly. Its button eyes stared right through her, as if measuring what part of Elina had already slipped away. A soft breath escaped its seams. "You tried to end it," it said, voice barely a whisper. "But breaking the circle only breaks the rules, not the curse." Suddenly, the entire house shifted again. Walls bled shadow. Theo's body sat upright, mouth opening in silent agony. "You're marked," he said, voice empty. "The ritual doesn't need a circle anymore. It's inside you now." Elina staggered back, clutching her chest. Her heartbeat was off, slower, colder. She looked at her reflection in the glass. Her eyes were still hers, but behind them, a thread flickered, red, tightening. The doll walked closer, dragging its feet like fabric soaked in blood. "Your turn to wait," it whispered. Then everything froze. The dolls dropped lifelessly. The house dimmed, and silence fell so thick it rang in her ears. When she blinked, Elina stood outside. The house was behind her, dark, crumbling, boarded shut. People walked by like nothing had happened, but in her hand was the doll, small, quiet, wearing her necklace. Her fingers wouldn't let go. Her legs moved on their own. She walked home. That night, Elina sat by her window, watching the candle she didn't remember lighting. The doll rested beside it. Its eyes stayed closed, but she knew they were still watching. And deep in her chest, something pulsed like a hidden thread. Across town, a child cried in sleep, reaching for a missing toy. Elina smiled without knowing why. Because when the next child picked up the doll, the game would begin again.